Shootin the Shield, powered by 365 Sports on our NFL channel. It's been a while, Tanner.
It has been a while, and it's weird that it happens around the time of like our national holiday, like the Super Bowl. This is kind of what we're all about. But
yes,
we've had other things going on, and we've put out other content and stuff. And it was a busy 2 weeks for you, my friend.
It was very, very busy. Part of the reason that we were absent 2 weeks ago was because I was actually in Hawaii checking out of my Marine Corps unit, 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment. Tanner, my ass no longer belongs to the Corps.
Well, there you go. You're a free man.
Free and clear.
Yeah, nice. Well, congratulations, right? This is a good thing. This is congrats. This is all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for anyone wondering how I was working here while still on active duty, I was working through the Skill Bridge program, which is a Department of Defense program, which allows transitioning military members to work for a civilian company for a period in their remaining months on their contract.
Well, officially welcome back to the States as a civilian.
Yeah. Maybe I'll permanently, rock a beard like you.
Yeah.
Or,
you can grow your hair out a little bit.
Maybe
get a little crazy.
I mean, it's kind of a veteran thing to let it all grow out for a little while, but we'll see. I mean, old habits die hard.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then last week we had every intention of putting out an episode.
We did. We had.
I was at Super Bowl Radio Row with our main crew: David Smoke, Paul Catalina, Garrett Ross was there, running a very, very busy week and very exciting week with it was a very star-studded event. Like, I saw the likes of Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson. We had Earl Campbell and Tony Dorsett on our show.
Yeah, I was going to say, what conversations did you have with any of these big studs, these stars?
I spent a majority of the time producing, as did Garrett, but Paul and Smokey hosted our main show from 3 to 6 every day. But we had LeGarrette Blount, and we had several other players. The one person I got to interview with Paul was Nate Boyer, who is a Texas Longhorn.
Correct, yeah. Former Seattle Seahawk.
And yes, I had my DD-214 in hand, and so it was pretty cool to talk to a fellow veteran at that point.
I'm sure that dynamic is pretty cool to be able to kind of, you have more than just one thing in common. You not only do you have the veteran side of things and the service to our country, but also the football side of things as well. And so you guys kind of just go back and forth on that.
Interestingly enough, he told me that one of the questions I had for him was, which is more difficult, military to civilian or football player to just a normie?
Right.
And the football player one, he actually said, was the more difficult transition.
I bet more people recognize him for his football stuff than they ever would his service.
Yeah, it's a shame because he's a Green Beret.
Well, right.
You have to have a little bit of badass in your blood.
He's slightly a badass. Yeah, right.
And we had every intention of putting out an episode, but with the time change and
then there was the freeze, and there was all sorts of things that just happened between our last show and now. There were so many obstacles that kind of got in our way.
But we are back now. Yeah. We're gonna have a Super Bowl recap on today's episode, and we'll do a little bit of a peek into the off season. And at the end of the episode, we'll go over what to expect in the coming weeks on our NFL channel. Right. We do not intend to go anywhere throughout the NFL offseason because, I mean, if you learned anything last year, a lot can happen in the offseason.
Well, not only that, but the NFL is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year league. I mean, whether they're playing or their active season is going on or not, the NFL is in the news or doing something throughout, whether it's free agency, whether it's draft, whether it's training camp, whatever it is. This is why they have an entire network dedicated to the NFL, and so it's a 24/7 league.
It's a beautiful thing. And speaking of a beautiful thing, how about the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah,
that was the best Super Bowl that we have seen since the last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. Against
it was
the
a very good. It was a very good game, really beginning to end. I really have to. I mean, you really look back on it, and it's one of those games where you're like, man, if that play went another way, or if that play didn't happen, or if this play happened, each little thing when you look back on the game was a game-changing play, and it goes to show how important taking care of the football is. Jalen Hurts made one mistake the entire game.
Only one.
And I have been a Jalen Hurts critic from day one. I have not believed in the guy. I've not thought he has been an MVP caliber guy. I've always thought it was the system. I thought he's been put in the right situation. He was making some of the throws out there that, it was Eli Manning Super Bowl-esque. It was some of the best quarterback play in a Super Bowl that I've seen in my life. I mean, he was threading the needle, tight windows, timing was perfect, decision-making was great. He made one mistake.
And it ended up costing him
and
the
it
game.
cost them the game. And that happened in the first half of the game.
Yeah, you don't know how costly those things are when they happen that early.
Right.
But I think Jalen Hurts, he proved that, like, yeah, I'm one of these top-tier quarterbacks in the league because, you know, he had a good season all year long, but people were questioning it because of Philly's, you know, subpar to weak schedule that they had. But you can't control that if you're Jalen Hurts. You just got to go out there and play your opponent. And he played fantastic all season long, got his team to the Super Bowl, and frankly, like it was this close. They were up by 10 at halftime. Like Jalen Hurts, I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, Cowboy fans, but he is going to be a nuisance for the future years to come.
I think he will be a nuisance as long as the Sirianni system continues. That the RPO system, it's very Doug Peterson-esque. I mean, this offense that we watched this year, I think, was a little bit more predicated on the fact that Jalen Hurts does have a threat using his legs, more so than a Nick Foles or a Carson Wentz or whatever, compared to that 2017 team. But the system, the offense in place, is very reminiscent of when they had success back whenever they won their Super Bowl just a few years ago. Who's going to stay on the defense? Is that offensive line going to maintain? Because the offensive line completely dominated. I mean, if the Eagles won that game, would anybody have been upset if Jason Kelce actually won Super Bowl MVP?
I don't think so.
Would any have been upset if Lane Johnson won Super Bowl MVP? I mean,
he would not have.
They wouldn't have. I realize that, but I don't think you could really argue the fact that they didn't play well enough not to. I mean, Jason Kelce was mowing guys down. They're actually having conversations in the league about banning the QB sneak because the Philadelphia Eagles are so dominant on the offensive line, just pushing guys back 5 yards, and Jalen Hurts gets 6 yards every single QB sneak.
I mean, that's such an Eagles thing. Oh, the Eagles are way too good at something. We've got to find a way. We got to find a way to outlaw that.
Yeah, right.
Because, yeah, you're right. Like, they had the highest success rate of any team in the league on quarterback sneaks, and every single time, you knew it was coming. Every single time. And yet they cannot even remotely stop it.
And it got to the point where Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, and probably aside from Aaron Donald, the best defensive lineman in the league, was trying to go over the pile. You don't go over the pile. You're giving up all leverage if you're trying to jump over the pile. But he was like, dude, I got to do something. I can't do anything else. And it just got to the point where the Eagles have now dominated it in that aspect, and they're trying to make rules to stop it. But I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes, and I want to talk about the heroics of, the ankle injury and being able to come back. And everyone did say, I mean, there are a lot of people going at the beginning of the season, the Chiefs' reign of dominating the AFC is probably dwindling or looking like that window is closing with guys like Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, guys like Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers, as they can stay healthy. There's a lot of talk about the Denver Broncos. That's just within their division.
Yeah.
That's not even talking about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens and Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. There are so many different teams that people really thought kind of were the sexy pick, and people are getting tired of picking the Chiefs every year, and they lose Tyreek Hill. They lose these weapons. They don't have any wide receivers going into the Super Bowl.
And then
we are.
They bring the best out of Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney. He might have found new life. Yeah. And he had a fantastic game, a touchdown in that awesome punt return.
They threw in a rookie. Sky Moore ends up getting a touchdown.
Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah.
Who the hell are these guys going into this season, right?
And it is the scheme of Eric Bieniemy, Andy Reid, plus having the best player in the league as your quarterback.
I mean, in this game in particular, one of the things that people were worried about for the Chiefs was their offensive line against that Eagles front, because a very, very good defensive line for Philadelphia, and yet they could not get to Patrick Mahomes.
And I do think moving forward, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have to look at what are we going to have to do different defensively going into next year? Yes, not every team is going to have a Super Bowl ambition and a Super Bowl roster and an offensive line that played as well as the Chiefs did for this one particular game. However, they do play a zone blitz scheme, and it is if we can hold our guys, hold your wide receivers in check long enough for our pass rush to get there, and we're blitzing guys off the edge, and we're blitzing guys up the middle to get to your quarterback, which is why they had so much success. What happens if that doesn't work? They got exposed. That secondary did not look good. I think there were a couple of eye-opening moments for the Philadelphia Eagles defense, especially, that were like, okay, maybe we're not as great if it gets shut down as people want to make us out to be, you know?
And you have to take a game like this with a grain of salt when you're analyzing the Eagles defense, just because of who is lined up at quarterback for the Chiefs.
100%, right.
But you're right. I think come draft season, they could be looking for a secondary or a linebacker with, one of their early picks. They're 31 because of, being the Super Bowl runner-up.
But they also have a pick from last year's draft. They have a second first-rounder that's number 12, number 11?
I believe so,
It's top 15 for sure.
And so, they'll be an interesting team to follow on draft day because they don't have that many holes at this point, but every team has, ways that they can improve, and they're going to have a lot of free agents coming up in this offseason. Yep. Be interesting to see what they do with the running back, Miles Sanders. He was kind of underwhelming in the Super Bowl. Could you imagine having a truly more reliable Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, one of these guys that is going to be a free agent?
Or drafting a Bijan Robinson with number 12. I mean, if any team is going to take a high draft pick with a running back, why not a team that's already established, ready to go, and it's just a missing piece? Yeah,
because, end of the season stats, Miles Sanders did pretty well. I think he had about 1,400 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns, and that's something that'll get you a handsome new contract for a running back. I don't know if it'll be with the Eagles or a different team, but if you had the Tony Pollard type explosiveness along with Jalen Hurts' running ability, that makes the Eagles so much more dangerous.
And they might go for maybe a guy like Pollard, depending on what his future is with the Dallas Cowboys. You have guys that you don't need necessarily a big name or to even spend an abundance of money on the running back position to solidify that need for the Philadelphia Eagles, simply because they do have a guy like Jalen Hurts who takes a little bit of pressure off your running back and takes carries away from your running back, who is going to be working on a new contract this offseason. Those contract talks are probably already have started with his agent in the front office, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. What else did you see in the Super Bowl?
Well, I do want to talk about this has been, since the game was played, I've been wanting to get this off my chest in front of a microphone and have a platform that we have.
I'm glad we're finally here.
And so the James Bradberry holding, okay? I want to get into it, and I want to get into just sports in general, because you hear it in basketball a lot, way more so in basketball than you do the NFL. In a moment like this, with the game on the line, how can you call a call like that? A holding is a holding, a foul is a foul, a roughing the passer is a roughing the passer, and out of bounds is out of bounds. I don't care at what point in the game, or if it's Game 7 of the finals, or if it's the 5th game in October for the NBA. I just don't care when it's being played. If it is a foul, it is a foul.
So you're telling all the Philly fans to suck it up?
I'm saying listen to James Bradberry, who committed the penalty and said, yeah, I held him. I thought I could get away with it. It was the right call to make. And it just, I don't know, and I don't, even when and I've thought Greg Olson has done a tremendous job all season long, and I was like, wow, he really stepped up, when Troy and Joe Buck went up to Monday Night Football. That crew really stepped up and did really well throughout the whole season. I like listening to Greg Olson, but I think he kind of created a lot of that controversy during his call while it was happening. It was, I just don't know if you can call that at this moment in the game. So you can call it in the first quarter. You can't call it with 2 minutes left. It's not an all-out brawl at the last 2 minutes of the game. It's not just, all right, well, the referees get to pack up early and let's get out of here and head home early and let the players settle it with the last 2 minutes on the field.
It's thought-provoking color commentary is what it is, because, you're right. A foul is a foul is a foul. A hold is a hold is a hold. But at the same time, Greg Olson, I agree. I think he's been doing a very good job, especially for how, short amount of time that he's been in the booth.
Yeah.
And that's just a knee-jerk reaction by a lot of people, because he's not a referee or an officiating expert, and so it was kind of a on the fence type of call. And if they hadn't have thrown that flag, I don't think anybody would even be talking about that play.
Well, and not only that, but does that necessarily mean that the Chiefs don't continue to run down the clock and get a field goal and end up still winning that game? It's a 10-yard penalty. And it is an automatic first down.
It's an automatic first down being that.
Right. But they still got the yards. And to be completely honest with you, Jerick McKinnon could have still scored. He was getting yards anyway, on that very next play or the couple plays afterwards. Now, they were letting him score. I understand that. But he still broke free, and he got the edge to get to that point. Who's to say that they don't run that exact same play, get the first down? Now, I know we're talking about what ifs and all this, that, and the other, but there was also a penalty that was not called in the first half of play on James Bradbury where he held, and it was an obvious hold, and it was like 3rd and 12, and it was not called, and the Chiefs had to punt the ball. Who's to say that that drive doesn't continue if they actually call that? And so there's so many what ifs and could have beens that happened in the game in favor of Philly and in favor of the Chiefs. And I don't think the refs deserve any sort of blame because it was a great game. And I don't even think there was a holding penalty called on the offense or defensive lines. It was a pretty clean game overall, but a lot of it's getting overshadowed by that one play.
Yeah, and they really let the players play. And that's exactly what you want in a Super Bowl. You know, a one-possession game, 38-35. Is very exciting. You know, the kicker, becomes the hero, and then all the Eagle fans at home are smashing their TVs in their living room.
Right.
Just like every other fan base had people doing as they got eliminated from the playoffs. And I mean, I'm just glad that we finally saw a good game. Because from the time the Eagles won that Super Bowl in 2017, we have seen a collection of just underwhelming or boring Super Bowls. And on the biggest stage, you want to see something entertaining.
Yeah, and the last couple of them have been a little, especially the Buccaneers Kansas City Chiefs game. I thought last year's game was okay. Yeah, I thought last year's game was okay with the Rams and the Bengals. I thought it wasn't extremely exciting, but it wasn't really boring. It wasn't a bad game.
My heart wasn't. I didn't have much of a pulse though.
Yeah, it didn't like get you on the edge of your seat at really any point, except for maybe at the end of the game where the Bengals could have won it on that last drive. And then even going back to the Chiefs and the 49ers game way back when, it only got exciting after it was 20-10 going into the fourth quarter, and then the Chiefs ended up with like 31 points, and it was like how quickly they scored 3 touchdowns, like right back to back in that Super Bowl. But you're right. It has been a little while since we saw a game like that, and it had really honestly been since the last time the Philadelphia Eagles were in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And
what? Okay, was there a commercial? Was there a halftime? What was your, outside of the game itself, all the other pageantries that happened for the Super Bowl, anything else stand out to you? Did you know Rihanna was pregnant?
That was the main point of debate. It dominated the conversations into the third quarter so much so that it was. And I was there with 2 of my buddies and their wives. My wife was there, and so inevitably, when you see Rihanna on stage like that, looking beautiful as ever, regardless of how pregnant she was, it was pretty obvious.
I thought so. Like, people were, like, debating, is she pregnant or is that post-pregnant belly? And I was like, post-pregnant belly, it doesn't look like that.
No.
Like, I guess anybody who has seen a pregnant wife and then post-pregnant wife, there's a difference between actually being pregnant and then there's the post-pregnant belly. And that is currently pregnant belly
it is.
For Rihanna, no matter how early or how soon she just gave birth.
And for all these haters out there who were saying that the halftime show was boring, like, imagine being 5 months pregnant, suspended 150 feet in the air.
What they wanted to do a spinning like belly turn or whatever, like lay on her belly and spin around and DJ or something. What do you want from her?
The memes of the video memes of Rihanna's baby dancing around during the halftime show were very funny.
Well, that, and then I do appreciate a good Super Smash Bros. Meme.
Yes.
And all of them that have ready fight, and it's her on stage. They're fantastic. Now, all the memes that come out of it are good. One of the commercials that I really liked was, I like the Breaking Bad. The corn pop or whatever, popcorn, whatever it is, popcorners.
I know you're all about Walter White.
Yeah, that was a great commercial. I really appreciated that one. The commercials weren't nearly as politically based, I guess, this year, which we'd seen a couple years. It's like, okay, I'm getting so tired of this, and they were pretty lighthearted. They were fun, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the funny ones don't go quite as hard as they did in the early 2000s.
No, they don't.
Like Bud Light, they're still pretty funny, but
and they had a cute one with Miles Teller, and everything he touches, people love.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, ultimately, anything with puppies is that's a good way to get just about anyone who has a soul
to enjoy your commercial.
Enjoy your commercial, and so it was all in all, it was a good night for everyone except Eagle fans, and I'm excited to already jump into the off season.
So speaking of the off season, let's if you're a Cowboys fan and you had the season that Philly had, no real Super Bowl aspirations going into the season, you end up making the Super Bowl and you do lose in a traumatic way, and you're so close to tasting what that feels like. As a Cowboys fan, putting yourself in a Philadelphia Eagles fan's shoes for that night, how do you feel about are you just like totally depressed and like, oh my God, this is the end of the world, this is the worst feeling ever? Or I feel like I'd kind of be like, you know what? We had a good season. I got to watch my team play in the Super Bowl and nearly win it.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like, you can either fall from 2 stories or 4 stories, like I don't know exactly what that perspective is like, because we have not seen the Cowboys play in a Super Bowl since I believe 1996, 95 season.
The 95 season, yeah.
So it's hard for me to actually answer that question, but one thing that Cowboy fans, I think, are going to be experiencing in the offseason is optimism, which a large percentage of Cowboy fans always have before a season starts.
Yeah, true.
But there's potential for there to be a chip on the shoulder of Cowboy fans and the team, just because they're not the clear favorites in the NFC East anymore, because the Eagles,
not even within their division, right?
The Eagles are really, really kind of looking like that juggernaut, especially if they retain most of the players that were on this team last year.
They already did lose a coach.
Yeah, going to the Arizona Cardinals, the offensive coordinator. I mean, that's a position I would imagine that they could, Nick Sirianni could find another guy.
And it's Nick Sirianni's system anyway. So, I mean, he's going to either find a guy or he's going to be the one running it one way or the other. So the system's not really going to change all that much.
Yeah. And I mean, the Cowboys, they have a lot of holes to plug up as well, but there is room for optimism, I would say, because it's inevitable. Yep. Even if the Cowboys have an absolute garbage roster going into the season, there's always a section of fans that are just, blindly faithful.
Right. And even going into last year. So I'm kind of with you. After last year's game against the San Francisco 49ers, and you lose in the first round, in the wild card round, and then you go through the offseason and you trade Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick, and you're like, man, we've got a bad draft. You're drafting an offensive tackle with Tyler Smith, who you don't know what he's going to be. Or you're going to line him up at guard, and then Tyron Smith goes down, and you're like, all right, well, we've got a rookie left tackle. And it's just like, then Dak gets hurt week 1, and you're like, man, things are looking bleak for the Dallas Cowboys. And so I'm talking, let's throw in the towel. Week 2, it's done. And after kind of seeing that adversity hit this team, and the way they responded throughout the regular season and still posted a 12-win season going into the divisional round, still losing, but going into the divisional round and improving from last year's team, you could almost argue the case that this team this year was better than that team that lost in the wild card round. And now you're going into an offseason where you're almost a little bit more optimistic, and you're thinking, okay, now you've got a legit shot at Odell Beckham still.
Yeah.
You could still bring in another guy. There's guys like DeAndre Hopkins who are on the trading block. There are guys out there, Brandon Cooks that doesn't want to return.
Mike Evans.
There's a guy like Mike. There are plenty of talented guys that you're probably not going to have to pay top dollar wide receiver market money to get, who are pretty talented and could fill that number 2 role behind CeeDee Lamb. Because now you're not looking for a number 1 receiver. You know you've got that. You're looking for a sidekick.
I don't know if sidekick is the right word. I think CD is the 1A, and I think they need a 1B. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like CD can stretch the field, he can go across the middle, he can burn guys, but you need a guy who can beat defenders on a jump ball, and I think that's what Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins provide you. And so I think if you're going to trade for any guys who are currently out there, those are the areas where you'd want to go. I mean, Odell Beckham is certainly on that list of possibilities too, but we don't know, how he's doing physically or mentally. I don't. That was a bad look of him, getting kicked off that airplane. By the way,
that plus
he's bringing the wide receiver era back into the NFL.
Well, and it's that, but it's also plus he had all these workouts with all these teams, thinking that he was going to be signed this season. And then, obviously, his physical did not pan out for any team in the NFL. Apparently, every team that tried him out was like, no, he's not ready. And so, is his body recovering the way it should be recovering? Or are we going to you're going to bring in a guy like Odell Beckham and then have a season like you had with, say, a Michael Gallup? Like, that's not helping your team just because you're bringing in a big name. You need the production that's going to come along with it.
I mean, but I think one of the things that Cowboy fans can rely on is knowing that after the season that they just had, you laid it out very well. They've got Mike McCarthy, who navigated through all that adversity, and they've got Dan Quinn coming back, Brian Schottenheimer, the new offensive coordinator, who had good seasons with the Seattle Seahawks, very run-heavy, focused guy, might take some pressure off of Dak. They need to, figure out who's going to be carrying that ball.
Right.
But I think he is, a good hire for that system. He was with the team this past year, so he's gotten, a lay of the land. Parting ways with Kellen Moore, that didn't surprise me because any inconsistencies that happened for the Cowboys this year were kind of just, there were a handful of games where the Jacksonville Jaguar game sticks out to me the most, where the offensive play calling was a big question mark. And it wasn't necessarily that Kellen Moore is a bad OC. He immediately got hired by LA.
Yeah.
But it was just inconsistency.
It's that, and then I think the front office is also saying, look, we signed Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is our number one guy, and we are not going to pass blame on him, but we are going to give him every opportunity and get every reason why he is not succeeding out the door. Maybe it's an Amari Cooper. Does he have a guy chirping in his ear? Does he have a distraction on the sideline? Let's get rid of an Amari Cooper who could be toxic in the locker room. We don't know the full story, but there were rumors of he's the Black Kirk Cousins. There were rumors of that may or may not be true. However, there had been rumors that Amari Cooper was not necessarily thrilled with his role and the amount of targets he was getting at the end of games when the game was on the line, right? And so maybe there's a distraction in the locker room. Let's get those guys out of the way. Let's get Dak to solely focus, all right? Well, now he comes back this year, and he's got CeeDee Lamb. He creates a number one wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. He gets hurt. He comes back, and now he's turnover prone. He's throwing interceptions. He's fumbling the ball. He's getting sacked. He's not moving around. He's not as mobile as he once was. Is that Kellen Moore's fault? Okay, let's get Kellen Moore out the door. Let's bring in a new guy. They're giving Dak leeway after leeway after leeway, and I think that leash, however, is tightening and tightening with each move that they make to try to help Dak. If he continues to struggle or continues to just not get the job done, there's only going to be one finger left to point at, and it's going to be number 4 behind center.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the good news about Schottenheimer, stepping in to be the offensive coordinator is, if you think about it, I think it was 2018 to 2020, he was the offensive coordinator for Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, and those were very, very productive seasons for Russell Wilson.
Right.
And now he is
efficient, and I think that's what Cowboy fans are looking with Dak Prescott, to be efficient.
And he made a lot happen with running backs in Seattle that you didn't really think about. Guys like Chris Carlson, Rashad Penny, when he was healthy, that is.
Right.
And, I mean, Marshawn Lynch came back for a skosh, but I think it's going to take pressure off of him if Dallas can really establish that consistency in the running game, whether it's just so up in the air. We'll have guests on here in future episodes to break down a little bit of what the Cowboys running situation is going to look like next year.
And let's we talked a little offseason, we talked a little free agency. Is there a draft position? Where do you want to look in terms of the Cowboys draft? They're going to be picking what, 26?
26 as of this date.
As of today, it is at number 26. First round, a lot of people are thinking you can't go all in on a running back. Well, it also depends on who you get in free agency, right? So say you franchise Tony Pollard. You're like, all right, we're at least comfortable having Tony Pollard back for one more season. And say you sign or trade for a DeAndre Hopkins or something along those lines. Say you get another guy that you're like, okay, we don't have to use a wide receiver as a first-round pick. Where in that first round, late first round, what position do you think the Cowboys need? And I know I typically try to lean towards best player available, but if there's just a hodgepodge of guys,
it's all very relative once you get that late in the first round. I think top 10 is where you really, really like take best player available. Yeah. I agree with you on that.
You're going to get a Micah Parsons. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I mean, that wasn't even top 10. I believe he was 11 or 12.
He was 11, yeah, I think.
And so, I mean, I'm looking to always improve something on defense because there's always a hole that you can fill out there. Their secondary is questionable at times. Anthony Brown got hurt this year, and that actually really affected their secondary. Maybe build up some depth at the safety or cornerback position. We don't know if Leighton Vander Esch is going to be back. He had a great year playing linebacker for the Cowboys. Linebacker could be, because, I mean, Micah Parsons, they say he's a linebacker.
He's an edge.
But he's just an edge guy who gets after QBs and makes their lives hell. I mean, getting someone actually back there at middle linebacker, if it's not going to be Leighton Vander Esch, you might want to look in that area. And then if not there, I mean, there's a good class of wide receivers once again this year. And if they don't trade for one of those veteran guys,
right.
or if Bijan Robinson isn't there, I think that there's plenty of ways that the Cowboys could go.
Well, and I think the Cowboys, I can see a scenario. Now, personally as a fan, I wouldn't like the scenario, but if Bijan Robinson is there at 26 and they don't take him and they go with a guy who maybe a corner slips and you get maybe lucky with a guy like a Joey Porter Jr. and you're like, look, he is a talent that we want, but also is a more important need for our team positionally, depending on where he plays. And so if you pass on that guy, maybe there's a Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama or something in the second or third. And then there's a Deuce Vaughn later on in the draft. There's guys, the A&M running back is a pretty solid back. He could be a third, fourth round guy that you could get a guy where around you got a Tony Pollard and have Tony Pollard be the number one guy. And then this guy kind of, since you're only franchising Pollard, you're probably not going to get him to a long deal, and groom the next guy maybe later on in the draft. There's so many different possibilities out there, but I do like adding depth to the offensive line. If there is a guard available at the end of the first round, or even a tackle available at the end of the first round, I mean, I don't think you could ever draft an offensive lineman high enough and enough talent on your offensive line. Look at the two teams in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Chiefs made it a point to protect Patrick Mahomes, and it ultimately paid off.
0 sacks against the number one pass rush in the entire NFL this year.
Yeah.
And then look at the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. Dominated Chris Jones, dominated Frank Clark. Didn't hear about him. Mm-hmm. And it was the whole, push up front from the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles that allowed Jalen Hurts to dominate the way he dominated. I think you continually have to build the offensive line. If you draft offensive linemen in the first round for 5 straight years, I'm okay with it. I don't think you can ever have enough good depth on the offensive line. So I would look at offensive line. I definitely look at secondary because I think your point about Anthony Brown is huge. Once he went down, that whole defense nearly shut down because they had to play so far off of wide receivers that it was just quick slant and quick little hit routes that were 5 yards, where Michael Parsons or Dorrance Armstrong or DeMarcus Lawrence, they didn't have time to get to the quarterback.
Yeah. And I mean, one last thing before we get to some current NFL players who might be on the move is Siaki Ika from Baylor University. Projected to go, early third, late second round. I think that defensive tackle, that's another position where you see those guys getting taken all the time because it is it's a place where you need depth if you want to have a successful defensive line.
And you can never have too much of it.
You can't. Yeah, it's never a problem to have too much talent and depth on your defensive line, whether it's a tackle or defensive end.
Yeah.
But
and Dallas needs up the middle. They have got to stop runs up especially playing teams like the Giants, especially playing teams like Philly, where they want to use that quarterback. They want to use the running back in scrambling around and moving the pocket and the RPOs and the runs up the middle. You have got to have those two big nose guards and those defensive tackles plugging up those holes and at least stopping the run and making life a little bit more difficult for them.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the rest of the NFL for a second. I want to pick your brain here, and we'll definitely have a non-Cowboys guest to talk about who is going to be on the move or potentially rumored to be on the move. Lamar Jackson, is he a Baltimore Raven next year, or is he playing someplace else?
I think he's a Baltimore Raven. Now, I know there's probably going to be a whole lot of talk about his comments on Twitter or things that he's posted online and things that he said about, getting paid and getting the bag this year. I think
he's good about being cryptic.
He is very good about kind of being cryptic. And so I think but I think that's his strategy to the Baltimore Ravens. Like, I think it's just like a play of his being like, look, I'm not opposed to playing in Atlanta. They need a quarterback. I'm not opposed to playing in Carolina.
He's from the area,
and so it's like it would be a pretty good fit for me to go somewhere else. And then they already have a history with Michael Vick, like, how great would it be for number 7 to go to number 8 and have that legacy to continue playing there? And so it's like, it's one of those things, right? But I do think the Baltimore Ravens are smart enough and well-ran enough franchise and organization where I don't think John Harbaugh is going to let that happen. I think he wants that system in place, and I think he knows how valuable that Lamar Jackson is, and that it's not easy to find a quarterback. The Ravens, if any franchise has had success without a star quarterback, it's been the Ravens.
Yeah. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer.
And Joe Flacco. Those aren't necessarily Hall of Fame names that you're listening to, but I do think that the system is in place. Everything is good to go. You're going to have to pay a guy of that caliber at some point in time.
I mean, last report on negotiations was that they were millions off in terms of what they thought that they were going to reach.
They had the same argument with Dak, and Dak got franchised again, and then they finally found the mark.
I think if Lamar Jackson is a Raven next year, it'll be under the franchise tag, and if he doesn't get franchised or if he just says, I refuse to play under that, I think that he'll probably be an Atlanta Falcon. That's just my gut feeling.
I think it's a great fit. I think Atlanta's a great fit for him.
If I'm Atlanta, I am heavily pursuing him too.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. And then that takes away your pressure from the draft and being like, okay, we're not necessarily in a position to draft a quarterback high. Yeah. So we're going to have to probably trade up to get one of those top 3 guys, whether it's Levis, Young, or Stroud. We're probably not within that range to get either of those guys. So we're going to have to trade up. Then you can take a lot of pressure off quarterback talk if you can get a guy like Lamar Jackson if you're the Atlanta Falcons. But I do think he stays in Baltimore.
I doubt they have a first-round pick if they get Lamar Jackson.
True, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Another one, Aaron Rodgers. What do you think?
I think he's closer to retiring than playing somewhere else. I think it is either going to be I'm playing. I think the number one option for him is retirement, Packers, and then somewhere else. I think that's the stepstones.
I mean, that's interesting. Maybe his changing personality is kind of an indicator that he might not be as interested in the game as he once was. But, I mean, he's leaving a lot of money on the table if he just walks away.
Yeah, I don't know. How much longer is his contract?
I believe it's he had an extension.
He had an extension like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
That was like for 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, he's locked into Green Bay for a little while. And I don't know if there is a team that is willing to necessarily trade that much. They're going to trade a lot for him, and he's you don't know what his future is.
Aaron Rodgers has $59.465 million guaranteed if he plays in 2023 as part of a 3-year, $150 million contract extension he signed last March.
Okay, so he's got two more years on that contract going into this year.
I mean, I think it would be very entertaining to see him get traded to the New York Jets.
I mean, I would agree seeing him play somewhere else would be interesting. And how ironic would that be? Favre to the Jets, Rodgers to the Jets. That would be an interesting dynamic there. But I think I really don't know if a team is willing to give up so much to get a guy who's invested so little right now into winning another Super Bowl. And he might only play for 2 more years. And then he's done.
I mean, the Jets, they have so much young talent on that team. If they have a quarterback that can get the ball to Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, they've got Breece Hall coming back. Yeah. They've got Denzel Mims, who they haven't really used at all. Yeah.
And they have a decent defense surrounded by
Yes,
that.
they do.
Yeah.
I mean, they're wasting C.J. Mosley right now as we speak. Mm-hmm. And Nathaniel Hackett taking the offensive coordinator job. Look, you never know after the season he just had with Denver if his success in Green Bay had anything to do with him or if it was all Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers wasn't his same normal self for most of the season this past year either.
Yeah, and I just don't know. It'd be interesting to me. Now, do people covet Aaron Rodgers the way they coveted Tom Brady? I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were like, look, we have a legit shot at a Super Bowl if we get Tom Brady. I think people with Aaron Rodgers are like, yeah, we're going to get a great quarterback.
I think people do covet him the same way.
Okay. And I'm not taking anything away from Aaron Rodgers in terms of him being a great talent. Like, yeah, he is still one of the best talented quarterbacks in the league. My thing is, I don't know if his brain and I don't know if his heart is into winning and leading a franchise as much as it once was.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest problem.
That's definitely an area up for debate. But as far as his situation with Green Bay, with them having Jordan Love, who looked fantastic when he got on the field this year, like he's been on the bench as a first-round draft pick for about 3 seasons now.
He's coming towards the end of his rookie deal,
and so they need to piss or get off the pot with him. And I think they could get a lot of draft capital. They could wipe a lot of salary cap space off of their radar if they can move on from Aaron Rodgers. He's 39 years old. He doesn't have that much football left in him. Even if he plays as long as Tom Brady did, that's another 5-6 years.
And that roster right now is not built to win with Aaron Rodgers right now.
No, it's not.
They went 8-9, 9-8, and
it took a while for any receiving options to become a threat in Christian Watson.
And do you really want to go into the season with Christian Watson as your number one guy?
You never know, because he really stepped up in the back half of the year. But if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I would be excited about the thought of maybe playing in New York. Robert Saleh has kind of, gotten the Jets up off of the ground a little bit.
Yeah.
They showed signs of life this year. The only problem was their pretty boy quarterback who couldn't get the ball to his weapons.
And I don't think that San Fran can afford Rodgers.
And
on top of the contracts that you're already working with McCaffrey, you're going to have to sign Kittle. You're going to have to sign Debo. You're going to have to get some of these guys. Fred Warner's probably up for a contract here pretty soon. You got to start thinking about the future of your franchise, and I just don't think Aaron Rodgers fits into that.
And there might be quarterback controversy with what San Fran has on the roster already, because they've got Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, coming back, both still on rookie deals, and you've got your number 3 overall pick who hasn't played a lot of football. He's coming off of an ACL injury. And then you've got Mr. Irrelevant, who almost got you to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be an interesting training camp in San Fran next year for sure. What about Derek Carr, released by the Vegas Raiders? He's been visiting with other teams, namely the Saints. I always thought the Jets or the Bucks might be good fits for him. But what do you think for Derek Carr?
I think Derek Carr, I like the Saints fit. I think the Saints fit is a good fit. I would be interested to see if there's not a team like Carolina that would be interested in taking him on. What did the Giants do with Daniel Jones and that situation? I mean, are they ready to move forward with Daniel Jones? Or are they ready to just say?
I believe they've already declined his 5th-year option.
So what about New York?
I mean, that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I think that is probably a lateral move at best.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if a team is willing to. I don't think there's a team for Derek Carr that he's going to make an incline move. I don't know if he's just going to elevate a team's roster to be like, all right, we're a Derek Carr away from a Super Bowl. Like, we're a Derek Carr away. I don't know if there's a team out there like that this year. I just don't. I don't see it in Indianapolis. I don't see it for Houston and the Texans. I don't see it for even in Atlanta or a Saints or. What about no? Because Pittsburgh, they're probably going to go with the kid. They're probably going to stick with Pickett. So I'm trying to just think of teams that are a borderline mediocre to good quarterback away.
I mean, I like Carolina because there haven't really been any rumblings about Derek Carr to Carolina, but they are a team that could be in shouting distance of drafting one of these high quarterbacks.
What if the Jets miss out on Rodgers, or they decide to not go with Rodgers?
I mean, that's what I initially thought, but like you said though, the Jets are not a Derek Carr away from winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
I think he'll be much better than Zach Wilson was, but it's
Derek Carr's a tough player. It's kind of like, hey, let's bring in Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
It's now Derek Carr, I will say, is a better player than Baker Mayfield. He's a safer Baker Mayfield.
He's like a Honda. He's reliable, but he's not sexy.
Right. And is a Honda going to win you a drag race? Probably not.
No, it's not. And I mean, the Saints would actually make sense just based on the trends that they have been on the past year. Like Andy Dalton, why was he the guy? Yeah. I mean, I think Derek Carr is definitely an improvement from that, but I'd be pretty shocked if Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston were on this team next year. I think they need to, shake up that quarterback room and, get a young guy in there and, a guy like Derek Carr perhaps that can, mentor for a season or so.
Yeah.
And, another option, if Matt Ryan, is not on the Indianapolis Colts next year, or if he retires, I mean, I don't know if they're going to want him around because
the Indianapolis Colts need to figure something out in terms of a quarterback that is going to be there for more than 3 or 4 seasons.
Mark my words, they will either have C.J. Stroud or Will Levis.
Yeah.
They're drafting one of those guys. But, it's a pretty time-honored tradition for teams to have a veteran quarterback to kind of, show the rookies how it's done.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that being said, the Tennessee Titans, same division as the Colts. They're a team that kind of has a question mark with Ryan Tannehill. They've got a raw project in Malik Willis, if he is indeed the future of that team. They're going to need to figure something out as well as the Colts. There's a lot of question marks with those two teams in the AFC South.
Yeah, I think the only team in the AFC South that has a quarterback is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that is weird to say.
Yes, it is.
that is a weird thing to say. So, but yeah, no, I think Derek Carr is an interesting move because, last year, even, we looked at a lot of the quarterback changes that happened around the league. And I think one of the most intriguing ones to me was Matt Ryan to the Colts. I was like, wow, I think he's in a much better situation to win. I think he's in a much better place, a better, run organization than the Atlanta Falcons. And yet they just completely crumbled and he didn't show any signs of life. And then now it's like, okay, he probably needs to retire. So it's a strange feel around the league. And, I think, the Seattle Seahawks, are they going to stick with Geno? It looks like they're moving forward with him. It looks like they're comfortable with him for at least another year.
He was so much better than anyone could have ever expected.
Yeah.
And I think that they're definitely a candidate to take an Anthony Richardson maybe, or, someone who's kind of a raw project, maybe not a first-round quarterback.
But can sit.
But somebody that can sit and, learn a thing or two. And, why not go back out with Geno? He's not going to hit your cap space too much. And he played very, very well last year, all things considered.
Ride him until the wheels fall off is what I would say. Until it looks like he just cannot play anymore, milk every ounce of talent that he has left.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one I want to get to, Josh Jacobs, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. Because there's a lot of running backs out there that are going to be free agents. But I think this one is the biggest question mark because he had a career year. Mm-hmm. And, the running backs, they don't get the love that they maybe deserve. The running backs who get those big contracts, they get them for the player that they were, not that the player that you were going to get in the future.
You were correct. Yeah, and I think the only exception to that might be Christian McCaffrey. That's probably the only exception to the rule in terms of a second contract.
And, even that's up for debate because of how much he's been hurt.
He's been injured.
He signed that contract.
Yeah, he's played, 12 games since that contract, something ridiculous like that. So, I just think, man, the Josh Jacobs thing, that is a real odd scenario. But I actually see him back in Vegas. I think they're going to re-sign him. I think that they are going to say, you know what? You didn't have a ton of miles on you going into last year. And I think the running backs are going to have to start realizing that the Le'Veon Bell movement that he was trying to get running backs paid and get them respected, that has failed. It's not going to happen. So,
yeah, it backfired for Le'Veon Bell, and it kind of had a ripple effect on the rest of the guys.
Todd Gurley and everybody else after him had the same fate, And so I think it is the Cowboys signing Zeke to a 6-year deal and trying to lengthen that contract to make it not cap hit heavy.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to go with running backs on a 3-year deal for a max of $10 million a year. Mm-hmm. And then that's probably because you're going to want to have to get out of that as soon as you possibly can, but also you're going to want to milk as much talent as they have. And so I could see a smaller 2 to 3 year deal for Josh Jacobs if that's what he's willing to take, but I think that's where the market is right now.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be great for him if he could get back with Vegas. I know majority of players, they don't want to change teams.
Well, and not only that, but you're losing a quarterback too.
Yeah.
To lose a quarterback and a running back, that's a lot of change on your offense.
That's true. One team that I think is interesting for Josh Jacobs is the Miami Dolphins, and that's because they've got Raheem Mostert on there. They've got Jeff Wilson, two guys who are very effective, very efficient with the touches that they do get, but they're not exactly bell cows. And Josh Jacobs has shown that he can be a 3-down guy.
Yeah.
He can catch passes. He can run people over. And the only issue with the Dolphins is their cap space because they've got big money guys on their team right now.
Well, and they're probably saving up for a little extension for Tua as well.
Yeah, but I think that, that could add an element to their offense that they didn't have last year. And I mean, the Dolphins have been known in the past for, just signing free agents in general. And so I think that could be a very interesting landing spot for Josh Jacobs.
I like it. I like the fit. The fit systematically works really well with what McDaniel does over there. And they do need probably a little bit more of a running game to take a little bit of pressure off of guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Any final thoughts before we sign this thing off for the week?
I'm excited for the offseason. We were talking a little bit before we came on air. This offseason, I think, is going to be very interesting. I don't think it's going to be as star-studded or as crazy as like the quarterback carousel that we saw last year.
And it wasn't just quarterbacks, man. It was receivers, running backs.
Right. You had the Devontae Adams move. You had the
Tyreek
Hill move. You had all the quarterbacks that moved around and changed around in the league, like Russell Wilson and things like that. What do you think about Sean Payton? And do you think that Sean Payton's going to maybe have a little bit of a turnaround effect with Russell Wilson?
Look, the Broncos are either going to crash and burn with those two, or they're going to actually finally, taste a whiff of that success, because they mortgaged their future with the Russell Wilson trade, and then they got a little bit of it back by trading Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins, getting a first-round pick, and they said, you know what, we're going all the F in. Yeah. We're going to go get our coach. They had to trade for a coach.
Yeah, you trade for a coach. And so it's...
Has that happened since John Gruden got traded from the Raiders to the Bucs? I can't think of an instance where it's happened.
I'm not sure.
But
I'm not sure.
The Buccaneers won a Super Bowl after that happened. So you never know.
You never know.
I mean, Sean Payton hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2009, and Russell Wilson, I think he won it in, 2014, 15?
Now, Drew Brees, they're going to essentially play the same exact offense that we saw with the Saints with Drew Brees. Now, that was a dome team. This is Denver, where it gets pretty chilly. Some of the weather isn't always great, and you're not going to have a controlled environment to be able to run that style of offense. And I don't know if Russell Wilson has the arm talent anymore. He did at one point. I don't know if he has it anymore that Drew Brees had throughout his career. I mean, Drew Brees is a first ballot Hall of Fame, one of the greatest of all time.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't think I can put Russell Wilson in that category. He is a tier or two below Drew Brees in terms of his entire career.
I mean, simply because of Sean Payton's track record, though, I think if it doesn't improve, it might be on Russell Wilson, because Sean Payton has never, ever... I mean, I might be forgetting, his earliest years in New Orleans, but he has always been a consistently winning coach.
Oh yeah, no, I do think that the Broncos are going to be a 9 to 10 win team. I think that's a fair win rate to put them at.
Yeah, I think,
and that's pushing for a wild card spot. That's pushing for you're not going to win your division at 9 to 10 wins with the Chiefs in there.
No, you're not. They'll probably be fighting for a wild card spot, like you said. But I think it's going to be interesting because, like they don't have – in Colorado, whether you're a Buffs fan or a Broncos fan, you've got nowhere to go but up for football in the Mile High State.
Yeah. I thought you were just talking about elevation.
Oh.
The altitude. They literally have nowhere else to go but up.
Well, by that logic, they have plenty of room to go down.
Yeah.
you ever been skiing or snowboarding?
Yeah. They could just ride that wave all the way down. So, but no, I think it will be an interesting offseason. I'm very curious to see kind of how these guys are going to play out. I think the wide receiver group that could possibly be moving around. We could see wide receivers move like we saw quarterbacks move last year.
Yeah. It's going to be very, very exciting.
Same with I think the running back position too is going to that market is going to look dramatically different after this offseason.
Yes, it's always very, very fun to guess and predict where people are going to land, what's going to happen, and where your favorite college players are going to be playing their pro ball. And so we're going to have more NFL draft content. Paul Catalina will be coming on with us here as the offseason keeps going along. We're going to continue to do Shootin the Shield. We will not be missing weeks like we have the last two times.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very, very exciting. We'll have guests to come on. Now that it's the off season, a lot of our guests are probably going to have a little bit more time to talk to us.
For sure. And also, subscribe to the YouTube page, because we're going to be putting out just like even short little just clips of our draft thoughts and little things like that. We've got a big off season ready to go, and we're excited where we're taking this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for listening, watching, like and subscribe. 365 Sports on our NFL channel and Cowboys channels. I'm Jacob Wilson. That's Tanner Carlson. Have a good week, everybody.